Well, I'm out today in the cold, and they wonder why we don't use the bike lane. It's colder than I expected today. It's like an icy bite to the wind. I don't know why I didn't expect it, of course, because it's always cold. And since they invented global warming, it's just got colder and colder and colder. There's somebody else parked in the bike lane. It's not uncommon to have 4 or 5 vehicles parked in this bike lane. But today I want to talk about something which I find quite worrying. And it comes off the back of an announcement by Halfords. Now, for those of you not in Britain, Halfords is a motor factor and cycling shop, and they're known for being suppliers in the lower end of the market. Halfords is known for value for money, shall we say. They have 3 levels. They have their Apollo brand, which is the cheap one. Carrera is the mid-level, and then they have the Boardman, which is their higher level. But even the Boardman bikes are extremely good value. And Halfords is also the place where many people go to get their first bike, because it's less intimidating than a bike shop. And they're all over the place. If they do a national advert for a special on a bike, you don't have to go anywhere different, but to your local branch. Halfords have announced that they're going to be stocking more bikes that are over £1,000, because sales of entry-level bikes are in decline, and that is really worrying. And it's worrying for a number of reasons. Firstly, it means that cycling's not being promoted properly. It means also that the anti-cycling press, who are, let's face it, primarily driven by oil companies and motor manufacturers, are winning. So why do you think that might be a problem? I mean, we ride bikes, who cares if anybody else comes and joins us? Well, unfortunately, it is a serious problem for a number of reasons. Firstly, it gives the anti-cyclists more of a voice, because they can start saying, yeah, but we should have more restrictions on cyclists because nobody does it. It's only those few elite people, and that's a problem. It means that we'll have far less cycling infrastructure. I mean, why would governments and councils spend money on cycling infrastructure if nobody's going to use it? And the irony is, it's a bit of a catch-22, because one of the reasons, at a time where fuel prices are incredibly high, car insurance is expensive, car maintenance is expensive, public transport isn't a cheap alternative, and yet despite all of that, people could just get on a bike And as long as they live within a reasonable distance, 4 or 5 miles from where they want to go, they can go there for free. Quite often quicker than in a car or on a bus. So why aren't they taking up that option? And as I said, one of the reasons is because there isn't sufficient cycling infrastructure. People don't want to start cycling because they perceive it as being very dangerous. And they're not wrong, because let's be fair, car drivers do hate us in the main. And another reason it's a problem is if new people don't come into the sport, it makes it elitist. And then even less people will come along. I used to like watching golf on the telly, and I kind of thought I'd like to give it a try, but I didn't for many years. And the reason I didn't was because of this idea that golf course membership costs you an absolute fortune, and they have very strict rules and they're very pedantic, and you can't go unless you've got the most expensive bats because people will laugh at you or turn their nose up at you. And that's kind of what will happen with cycling. And then of course after that, the mid-level bikes will start to become more expensive. And eventually there'll be very few people who can actually afford to ride. And the thing with golf is, they've got their own places to do it. So they can carry on amongst themselves. Whereas us, well, we use the road. Even if you're a gravel rider or a mountain biker, quite likely you use the road to get where you're going. And the more anti-cycling rhetoric there is, the more they'll try and restrict our use of the roads. It really is important to get people out on bikes, and a lot of people over the years have started riding a bike for transport and then found they really enjoy it and carry on as a leisure activity. So the fact that the entry level is in decline, I think is a major problem. I mean, I've spoken about this before, cycling as a racing sport is in decline. And I know there are a number of reasons like traffic and more difficult to run events and this kind of thing, but a lot of it is this barrier to entry where you've got under 16s on £10,000 bikes, and anybody coming into it new says, well, I can't compete with that and I can't afford that sort of bike. And I started out on a bike. It was called an Armstrong, I don't know, it was branded as Armstrong, I don't know who made it, but it was the cheap bike that, parents got the kids to go to school on, and that's what mine was for. So when I started riding, and I thought I really liked riding bikes, I decided I was going to start racing, and I turned up at a race on my Armstrong in a pair of rugby shorts and a t-shirt. People didn't laugh at me. They were very welcoming and encouraging. And I didn't come last. And so I went back. And when I started getting better at it, only then did I think, okay, now I can justify having a better bike. But even when I got a better bike, it wasn't anything outrageously expensive. And there were rules about the level of equipment you could have in the lower categories. And from those humble beginnings, I went on to compete at quite a high level. As youngsters are put off racing, and cycle racing is in decline, well, it makes it difficult for, even more difficult for the entry level, because for a lot of people, watching the Tour de France or the Tour of Britain and these kind of events is what inspires them and starts them riding bikes. So let's not forget about the environmental benefits of getting more people out on bikes, not to mention the health benefits. I know some people even now, when you ride past them and they don't wave out at you, and already there's a little bit of an elitism about it sometimes. And those people don't mind if the sport becomes a little bit elitist. But really, I can assure you, it's bad for everyone. It's bad for all of us. So if you've got an old bike in the shed gathering dust, give it to someone who can't afford a bike. If somebody's thinking of starting cycling, encourage them. Because we really do need more people out cycling.